My mom's abusive fiancé stole my hard-earned college savings to buy their new house. When I confronted her, she defended him and told me to suck it up. So my mother and her fiancé recently got arrested, and my grandparents on my mother's side are giving me a lot of hate for that. This happened because I called the cops on them, and I had good reason to do that. My mother and I never got along, especially since my dad passed away 10 years ago. I am 17 right now, and in a couple of months, I'm supposed to start college. Unfortunately, I had always known that my mother would never have any money set aside for me. So I knew that I would have to work for myself and make my own arrangements. I started working at the age of 14. I would do part-time jobs after school, and I had been saving for the past 4 years so that I would have at least some amount set aside. I would also often get cash from my relatives on my birthdays as gifts, and even sometimes on the holidays, so I would set that aside as well. So far, I had saved up almost $7,000, and I was pretty happy about it. It was all in cash, of course, and I kept it safely tucked away in a little corner of my cupboard in a wooden box that my father had carved out for me. I did not have a bank account because my mother never allowed me to create one, so that was out of the question. But I had never told my mom or anybody else about that, so I don't know how anybody was able to find it. Anyway, a couple of days ago I found that box was entirely empty. Empty. When I asked my mom about it, she told me that her fiancé had taken the money to invest in his new house. I completely lost my mind when I found out what happened. There was a huge fight in the house with me on one side and my mom and her fiancé on the other, but at the end of the day, I'm just 17 and they are in power right now. So, I had to concede. The only thing that I could do, I walked up to my room, locked myself in, and cried for hours because this was my life, and I would have to start from scratch yet again. I wasn't even sure if I would be able to save enough money for anything before college, and I was just really disheartened and completely lost. That was the day that I made up my mind. I was going to get back at them for this because this could not go unanswered. It was pretty big, but thankfully I was able to get my revenge exactly 3 days later, and now they have been arrested and are paying for the crime that they committed. My only problem in this entire scenario is that my grandparents, who had always been on my side so far, are now against me, and it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. My mom's fiancé, I'll call him Rob, has been in my life for the past 2 years, and I have hated every single second of it because he is literally one of the most terrible people I have ever met. I would even go to the extent of calling him abusive. Probably not physically, but verbally and emotionally, definitely. Abusive. My mom usually bears the brunt of it, but occasionally he loses his temper with me as well and says whatever comes to his mind. He curses me out, tries his best to make me cry like my mother, and gets even more pissed off when he realizes that I don't care, which leads him to lose even more control of his tongue and what he says. My mother never bothers to defend me. My mother did not date anybody for the first couple of years after my dad passed away, but then she met Rob. For the first few months he was nice and tolerable, but then they had their first big fight, and that's when he started showing his true colors. 6 months into the relationship, he had already started manipulating my mom and had let him move in with us. He was a no-good deadbeat idiot and could barely stick to any job. For context, he is in his 32nd, mid to late. And he still relies on his parents for money occasionally because he has absolutely zero financial sense and is constantly wasting money, way more than what he earns. When he's fighting with my mom, he takes money from his parents, and when he's not fighting with my mom, he's comfortable enough to leech off of her. The sad part is that my mother isn't exactly a billionaire who can afford to support her partner who wants to lead an extravagant lifestyle. She is the floor supervisor at our local supermarket, and while she brings home a decent amount, it's not enough for the kind of lifestyle that Rob wants. Anyway, I never let it become a problem for me. I always try to be as independent as I can. Right from the age of 14, I tried to avoid asking my mother for anything apart from my basic necessities. And after I started working part-time, I wouldn't even ask her to pay for those. I don't ask my mother to buy me anything, and the only thing that I rely on her for is probably just shelter and food. That's it. I don't ask her to do anything extra for me or go out of her way because I know that even expecting that is pretty foolish. She has made it very clear to me right from the beginning that she doesn't like me. Even when I was a child, she was never very nice to me, and I always had this feeling that she did not even want me. As I grew older, that feeling strengthened into a belief. At least before, I had my dad to have my back and stand up to my mom whenever she would get a little too pissed at me, but after he passed away, I was on my own. And that's how it has been for the past couple of years. Things just started getting worse when Rob came around, but I always consoled myself by telling myself that soon enough, I would go away for college and then I wouldn't have to worry about any of this. Now that seems bleak and unlikely to happen. For the 3 days after my money was taken away from me, I just stayed in my room and did not do anything because I was just so depressed. The day after I learned that all my money had been taken away from me, we moved into our new house. I did all the work that was required to do, but I did not speak to either of the two people living with me, and they did not seem any worse for it either. On the third day, my mother told me that I had to get dressed in the evening because they were hosting a housewarming party, so I started screaming at her. And I told her that I was not going to do anything of the sort because she had taken my money from me. The only reason they had been able to seal the deal and buy this house was because of the money that they had stolen from me. That really pissed my mother off, and she told me that now we were finally living in our own house and not a rented place. I should be happy for them. And I need to just suck it up and let this one go because I owe them for life anyway, referring to the fact that she had raised me, which doesn't even make sense because that was something she was legally bound to do. And it was not like she did me any huge favors. As for the house, it was too big for the three of us anyway. I knew that they had bought this house just to be able to impress everybody with their upmarket address and spacious home. I was really upset that day, and I did something that I hadn't done before, so I decided to call out my father's parents. It was kind of complicated because after my dad had passed away, my paternal grandparents had sort of distanced themselves from our family because it was too painful to keep in touch, I guess. I don't know why, they had just cut ties with us, and we were not on speaking terms anymore. But I still had their numbers, and I decided to call them as sort of a last resort since my maternal grandparents, whom I had a better relationship with, were actually kind of neutral in this context. The day that my money had been stolen, I had told my mom's parents about it because I had expected them to talk to my mom and fix this for me, but they had just told me that they wanted my mother to be able to buy a new house. And they were happy about it. But on the bright side, we would finally have a place of our own and wouldn't have to worry about rent every month, so they told me to look on the bright side and find the silver lining in this. I thought that it was a pretty weird reaction from them, since so far they were always trying to be on my side. They wouldn't ever exactly say anything to my mom, but they would always sympathize with me. However, this time things were very different, and I didn't understand that reaction. I was very pissed with them as well, so I did not contact them after that. On the day that my mom told me to suck it up, I decided to contact my grandparents, hoping to get some other sort of response from them. One that would give me some hope for the future at least. I don't know what it was, just a gut feeling that told me to call them, and so I did. Thankfully, they answered my call as well, and as soon as they picked up, I told them everything that had happened. I told them that I knew they were too hurt to talk to us and did not want to keep in touch, but this was an emergency, and if my dad was still alive, he would have wanted to help me out right now. I told them my mother had taken my money from me, and I had been working so hard for the past couple of years to be able to afford to go to college, but now I don't even know if that's going to happen. After telling them, my grandfather told me that this was really confusing because apparently my dad had actually left a college fund for me, so he had no idea why I would need to save up money separately. That was news to me because my mother had literally never said anything about this, and I had never asked her either because I had just assumed that she would not have any money set aside for me. But I had totally forgotten that before my dad passed away, he might have done something for me. After all, he knew that he was going to pass away. But he had died so young that I had just assumed that maybe he might not have had time for me. So when my grandparents told me about this little bit of information, I found that to be really interesting. I was pretty pissed off and frustrated by that point, so I asked my grandparents if they had any proof that they could send me which I would be able to use against my mom. They told me that they were going to look for some documents and would call me later. For the next couple of hours, I just waited in my room and tried to piece everything together. And I realized that my mom and Rob had definitely teamed up and swiped my college fund to use for themselves so that they could buy this house. Because as far as I was concerned, I did not think that my mother had enough money to purchase the house. And as for Rob, he had not even been employed anywhere for the past 3 months, so I highly doubt that it was within his means to buy a house like this. I just needed something to be able to confirm this, and then I would report them to the police. After waiting for a couple of hours, my grandparents finally reached out to me and sent me photos of some documents, which my mother had literally signed, stating that she would use the money that my father was leaving her to pay for my college tuition and to make sure that I led a comfortable life. I literally laughed out loud when I read that because she had done everything but ensured that my life was comfortable. In fact, I think she went out of her way to make my life more uncomfortable. Anyway, she had signed those documents, and it really pissed me off that my grandparents had never brought it up before. They had just dropped me after my dad passed away, and everybody had abandoned me. My mother had never really been there for me. My mother's parents tried to be there for me, but I think it was all an act, and my dad's parents were too caught up in their own grief to care about me. When I asked my grandparents why they had never shown these papers before, their excuse was pretty lame, and they told me that they had kind of forgotten about it after my dad passed away. At the time, I was too young anyway, and once I got older, we were not on speaking terms anymore, and it had slipped their minds because they were getting older as well. I couldn't argue with that, so I just let it go. But once I had the proof, I called a friend of mine whose dad was on the force, and I told him that I needed his help. So in the evening, just as the housewarming party was getting started, my friend's father showed up with another cop and a lawyer to arrest my mom and her fiancé because they had very clearly broken the promise that they had made. And it wasn't the breaking of the promise that was the problem, but by going against what she had promised. My mother had literally opened herself up to lawsuits since she had gone against the terms of the agreement that she had signed all those years ago. While I was explaining everything to the guests at the party, they were finally placed under arrest, and I think that was the most vindicated I have ever felt in my entire life because pretty much everyone that they had hoped to impress, like some of their ex-coworkers and friends, were all really disgusted when they got exposed and taken away in handcuffs. Even then, they were too proud and arrogant and just kept glaring at me as if I had done something wrong. My grandparents, my mom's parents, had also been present at the party, and when they saw their daughter being taken away in handcuffs, they were really upset and refused to speak to me. After the party was over, once everyone had left, I was left in the house alone, and I had no idea what to do after that. I was heartbroken because even though they had been placed under arrest, they would probably be let out on bail in a couple of hours. Even though I was going to press charges against them, it would take months to prove everything, and even after that, there was a strong chance that they might be let off the hook in case they were able to turn the tables in their favor. There was just no telling what might happen. And until then, I wouldn't get back the money that was meant for me, so I was still going to lose out no matter what I did. And I couldn't exactly sell the house either because the names on there were Rob's and my mom's and not mine. And even if I wanted to legally force her to sell this house and give me the money, I would have to fight the case along with the lawyer. Now, I did not have to worry about the cost of that because my friend and his father had been kind enough to tell me that they would arrange for that. And I did not have to worry about it since they are pretty close to me and understand what I'm going through. However, now I have no idea what to do, and to make matters worse, the only people that I had on my side, they are not speaking to me anymore. My maternal grandparents told me that they had no interest in speaking to me since I had been ungrateful, and they could understand that I did not get along well with my mom, but sending her to jail over something like this after she had done so much for me just did not sit right with them. And they had no interest in having any contact with me anymore. And that's what really got under my skin because now I feel like I'm alone. I definitely did win for now against my mother and Rob, but I feel like in the long run I might have lost a lot. I just don't know what to do right now, and I feel completely helpless. AIT for having my mother and her fiancé arrested for swiping my savings to buy their new house? Update 1. Hello. I have moved out of the house that I was living in previously that Rob and my mom had purchased. The reason for that is because it's been a week since I reported them to the police, and after being in custody for 48 hours they were let out and they came back home. As soon as I heard them come back in, I decided to get out of there because I did not want any confrontation. I had my stuff packed up beforehand anyway, so I just had to leave. They walked in, and I walked out. They tried to get me to stop and speak to me, but I did not want to speak to them, so I just walked out as quickly as I could. I got a cab that I had called for myself, and after that I headed straight to my friend's house, and I've been living here for the past 3 days. For the record, this is the same friend whose dad helped me out with the arrest and the lawyer, and now her father, the lawyer, and I are sitting together every single day trying to figure out how to wrap up all of this as quickly as possible. At this point, I am really desperate, so I'm willing to come to a settlement, and we have arranged for a meeting with their lawyer, them, and the court-appointed mediator in a couple of days. And we're going to see how the negotiations go down. But if they refuse to agree to my terms, then we're going to have to take this to court, and then we don't even know how long that's going to take. I'm going to try my best to come to a settlement, but I want it to be fair, and I want to get the financial support that I need to be able to finish my education. My friend's father has told me that for now I can expect financial aid from them, but I am kind of hesitant about accepting financial help from anybody else because I feel weird about it. As for my grandparents, nobody has spoken to me yet. Obviously, my maternal grandparents and my father's parents stopped speaking to me right after they sent me photos of the document. I have collected those documents from them in person so that we have some tangible proof as well, but apart from that, we have not had any interaction so far. Even when I went over to collect those documents from them, they were pretty nonchalant about the entire thing and told me that they wish me the best, but did not offer to help me or even invite me in to maybe speak to me or something. I don't know. I honestly have no idea what's going on with them, since their behavior has honestly been really weird for me to deal with. But anyway, things have been really disappointing so far. I just hope that I'm able to get over this as quickly as possible so that I can start college. Honestly, that is the only thing keeping me going right now. And of course, my friends are being really supportive, which I really value because I don't have any family to speak of at the moment. So these are the only people who care about me. Update 2, hi. So, there's been an interesting development, and I don't even know what to say right now. I'm literally shaking with anger because what I found out is disgusting. Again, this is kind of doubtful, but then my mother had screenshots, so I don't know what to believe. Anyway, what happened was that there were just 2 days to go before our meeting with the mediator. And today, just a couple of hours ago, my mother reached out to me via email and told me that she really needed to talk to me. I had blocked her everywhere else, so she could not have any access to me. But she created a new email account and sent me something that really screwed up everything that I had thought was true. So I don't want to waste time, I'll just get straight to the point. My entire freaking family conspired against me. That's right. The reason that all my grandparents had been so weird throughout the entire process, they had all been in on this right from the beginning. My mother had not only used that money that had been left to me by my father for herself, but all of them had taken their share and kept their mouths shut in exchange for that. I can finally understand why my maternal grandparents were upset that I had reported my mother to the police, and why they always pretended to be concerned for me but never actually stood up for me when it came to my mom. Because she had dirt on them. And why my paternal grandparents had never even bothered to tell me that these documents that my mother had signed even existed before I asked them about it. They had all been in on this, and my mother had sent me proof of it. She had had conversations with them earlier when I was around 14 or 15 years old. Luckily, she had all of this on record because all of them had been foolish enough to have these conversations via email, and she had sent me screenshots of these emails. She told me that since I had her arrested, it was only fair that I drag these people into the situation as well because it was not fair for her to get punished when it was all of them who had conspired against me to hide it from me and use the money for their own gain as well. My dad had left a huge amount of money for me, and all these people, including my dad's lawyer, had figured that it would be better for them to hide it from me and use it for themselves. I still can't believe that this happened, and I have been rereading that email over and over. Again, trying to make sense of it because it just seems unbelievable that all these people are against me, even my dad's own parents, which is so insanely shocking. The only reason they had even told me about the documents that my mother had signed and sent me the proof recently was because their conscience had finally checked in and they had had a change of heart. So they had realized what they were doing was wrong, and when I called them up to ask them for help, they decided to spill the truth to me. They had been planning on doing this way earlier, but my mother and her parents had convinced them not to tell me the truth because that would drag them down as well. So they had promised them that they would not come up to me and tell me everything, but if I ever asked them, they would definitely come clean to me. When I asked them if there was anything that they could do to help me, they decided to send me those documents as proof, and that's how all of this came to light. I'm glad they chose to help me back then, but that does not absolve them. It also explains why they were so weird and distant even after helping me out, because they were guilty. They still haven't been able to own up to what they did, and they are actually ashamed, which they should be. But right now, my brain is simply not functioning anymore. I don't know what to believe, and I just don't know how to deal with any of this. I haven't even told my friends about what I found out because it's so big it's literally driving me insane. I feel betrayed, hurt, and angry all at once. And I don't know what to do with these emotions right now. Obviously, I'm going to have to talk to my lawyer because this is a huge development, and we are definitely going to bring this up during the negotiations. My mother, in an attempt to turn the tide against the people who exposed her, forgot that she was also going to lose out on a lot of things due to this process. And I'm glad that she told me all of this because I think I needed to know that nobody has my back in this world except maybe a handful of people. I cannot rely on anybody, and that's just how it is, I guess. The only thing that's left to do right now is to tell my friend so that he can communicate it to his father. And then we can all sit down with my lawyer and decide what to do about this and how to go forward. But no matter what, I'm definitely going to college this year. I've made up my mind. I'm not backing down. I'm ready to ask my friend's dad for help. I'm not going to ask him to pay my college tuition, but I guess I'm going to ask him to be a CO signer on my loan application because I think that's the only thing I can do right now. Update 3, hi. So we had a meeting with the mediator today, and like I had said, I definitely brought up whatever my mother had told me in the email. She basically just confessed everything that she had done, and so she's going to have to cough up the amount that she and the rest of the family have stolen from me. But she also tried to claim that some of the money went into my upbringing as well. So we cannot hold it against her and should not expect her to return any of the amount that had been taken from the fund, but believe that my grandparents needed to do so. Not only did they take that amount of money away from me, but they also took with it my dreams and my aspirations, and I demand that they return it to me so that I can live a respectable life. I'm not going to be dependent anymore. I spoke to my lawyer and my friend's dad about it, and they said that things like this are definitely not unheard of, but that does not take away from how sly and disgusting it is. They were outraged, and rightfully so, just like I was, and they told me that they were going to make sure that I don't have to rely on anybody else for money my entire life. Because of the kind of money that they have stolen from me, I would have been comfortable for every single year of my life in the past after my dad passed away. He had taken all the measures to make sure that I led a happy life, and my family couldn't understand it. They had to absolutely take it away from me because they are just that selfish. Well, that's not going to fly with me any longer. My lawyer and I had a talk, and we decided that we were going for the throat. There's no need for us to sit back and let them have their fun, especially on my dime. Things got pretty brutal there, but one thing's for sure, we are going to have another meeting, but this time my grandparents, all of them, are going to be present because clearly they have been part of this as well. Things might go to court, but until then, I'm just going to take out a student loan and deal with it. But I'm going to make sure that I get my justice. More than justice, I need to get back the money that they have stolen from me. All of them have to pay me back because the money that was for me was meant to be for me and nobody else. That is not the agreement that my mother had made, but they also made the promise all of them had made to my father, protecting me and keeping me happy. They are all failures, and I never want to see them again.